The film begins with Preston Blake, a billionaire. He is an 82-year-old man who is hiking up a snow-covered mountain. He wants to capture every moment of the hiking trip, so he has his camera crew and the entire hiking team with him. Unexpectedly, an ice storm occurs, and his team flees down the mountain to avoid being buried under snow. Blake doesn't give a damn and continues ascending the mountain. Afterward, Blake is discovered frozen at the mountain summit due to the cold. The rescue helicopter transports his body to his New York home, and word spreads that the multi-billionaire Blake is no longer alive and left behind assets worth $40 billion that are currently unowned because he didn't make a will. Blake is the owner of a multinational corporation. Cecil Anderson and Chuck Cedar, his company's shareholders, are overjoyed that Blake is no longer alive because they now own the entire company as well as his holdings. Somehow, they both come to know that Blake has a New Hampshire-based nephew by the name of Longfellow Deeds. They travel to New Hampshire to let him know that he is now the legitimate owner of his possessions. Deeds owns a pizza shop in New Hampshire and is also a poet. He always entertains his customers with his poetry and is well liked by all New Hampshire residents. When Cecil and Chuck arrive at his shop, Jan, the head waitress, informs them that Deeds is out delivering pizza and will be back soon. In the meantime, Deeds arrives and meets them. He is a very comical character. They both inform him of his uncle's death and tell him that he now owns all of his uncle's assets. Deeds doesn't take it seriously and begins laughing, claiming that he has no idea he has an uncle and that he is far too wealthy. They persuade him again and again until he agrees to own that money. Chuck informs him that he must accompany them to New York to finalize some paperwork before becoming the official owner of this wealth. Deeds agrees to accompany them to New York. On their way to New York in a private chopper, Deeds informs them that this is his first ever trip by air. He keeps acting witty, and Cecil and Chuck are quietly making fun of him. When they arrive in New York, Deeds meets Blake's personal servant, Emilio Lopez, who will be his servant from now on. Deeds meets him and the other servants as friends rather than as servants. Chuck is not pleased with his friendly behavior towards the servants. Actually, Cecil and Chuck are opposed to giving Deeds any share of the company, so they intend to defraud him by obtaining his signature on papers, after which he will no longer be the owner of the company. They had a meeting to talk about paperwork. During the meeting, Deeds enters the room and asks Chuck if he can help the company in any way. Chuck claims that he only needs to wait outside until the meeting concludes and that in a few days he will have all of the necessary paperwork and will be able to run the company as he wishes. Meanwhile, an athlete bursts in and tells Chuck that he must pay him or he will seize the company. Upon hearing this, Deeds loses control and knocks him to the ground with a punch to the face. Chuck yells at Deeds for his inappropriate behavior and asks him to wait outside. A day later, Deeds is out on the street for a nighttime stroll. Babe arrives with one of her coworkers, who pretends to be harassing and looting her. Deeds rushes to save her from that guy and hits him hard. He then approaches Babe and begins to converse with him. Babe thanks him and introduces herself as a nurse, stating that she has always wanted to be a reporter rather than a nurse. Deeds tells him that he owns a restaurant but has always wanted to be a famous poet. He invites Babe to join him for dinner at a restaurant. They began meeting and spending time with each other regularly after that day. Despite the fact that Babe only has to pretend to be in love with Deeds, she is now actually in love with him. While walking with Babe one day, Deeds notices an apartment on fire. A woman is in the apartment with her cats, and she is afraid to jump from it. When Deeds sees them, he climbs the building like Spider-Man without giving it a second thought and enters the apartment. The rescue workers, as well as Babe, are all taken aback by his stunt. He throws the cats onto a life net and then jumps with the fat lady. They both fall to the ground in an unconventional pose, and someone captures them. Babe's coworker releases this news along with the video, but presents it oddly, implying that Deeds was doing something peculiar with a woman. Babe dislikes it, but he can't do anything about it right now. Deeds notices the news and feels sorry for himself. He then begins texting Jan, telling him that he just tried to save someone but is now feeling guilty about it. Jan then encourages him, saying that Blake's company is so large and that he is a good guy who hasn't sold it and is helping about 50,000 people at a time by employing them. Deeds then felt even worse because he was planning to sell his share. The next day, while playing badminton with Chuck, he tells him that he will not sell his shares to anyone because he does not want any workers to lose their jobs. The following day, Chuck approaches Babe's boss and requests that he do something so that Deeds can abandon the idea of not selling his shares. He assures Chuck that everything will go according to plan. The next day, Deeds takes Babe to his hometown. When they return, Deeds gives her his written poem to express his feelings for her. When he leaves, Babes begins to worry that she is deceiving an innocent and honest man for the sake of promotion. She goes to her boss and tells her that she will no longer defraud Deeds. Her boss threatens to expose her if she does not obey him. She leaves, telling him to do whatever he wants. Deeds had prepared himself to ask Babe to marry him the following day. Meanwhile, Babe arrives with the intention of telling Deeds everything, but Chuck turns on the TV and shows Deeds that Babe is not a nurse but a reporter. He shows Deeds all of the clips, saying that he is being recorded wherever he goes with Babe, which was her mission. This breaks his heart, and he realizes that he is easily duped, so he decides to leave. Deeds instructs Cecil and Chuck to donate his company shares to any non-profit organization. He then gets a ride back to New Hampshire. Chuck and Cecil are overjoyed that they will now completely own the company. Babe realizes her blunder and travels to New Hampshire to make an apology to Deeds. She arrives at his restaurant and meets Jan. Jan is well versed in her and Deeds' lives. She begins yelling at her that she has broken Deeds' heart and that he is still depressed because of what she has done to him. Babe inquires about Deeds. She asserts that she is not going to tell her about Deeds. Having said that, she attacks Babe. Both women begin to fight, but Babe eventually wins the duel. Following this defeat, Jan tells her about Deeds. Babe rushes to that location, but when she arrives, her heels cause the ice to crack, and she falls inside an ice hole into cold water. She began yelling for help. Deeds notices someone shouting for help and rushes to assist, but when he realizes she is Babe, he refuses to assist, stating that this will also be a shoot for her news channel. But when he sees her drowning in the water depths, he rushes to help her and pulls her out of the freezing water. Babes tells him that she truly loves him, but Deeds refuses, claiming that he will never believe anyone again. He abandons her and departs. Babe now has no choice but to return, which she does. One day, while sitting in a bar, she watches television and learns that Blake's company is losing revenue by the day and that Mr. Chuck plans to sell it, causing many of the people who work there to lose their jobs. The day has arrived, and Chuck has planned a seminar to sell company stock. Meanwhile, Deeds appears and informs him that he has shares in this company as well and thus has the right to speak to the audience. Chuck let him speak, saying that no one would listen to him. Deeds then addresses the buyers, stating that the company should continue to operate and that we should not sell it because over 50,000 workers rely on it, and if the company is sold, they will all lose their jobs. Hearing Deeds' remarks and his emotional attachment to company employees, the buyers give him a standing ovation, and at the same time, Babe shows up with some paperwork in Blake Preston's diary. She then tells them that Blake wrote in his diary that he had a son from his maid in 1957, and that son is none other than Emilio. She then shows some DNA results of Blake and Emilio and informs the group that Emilio is the company's legitimate owner. Emilio beams with joy upon hearing this. He fires Chuck immediately and orders the guard to kick him out. Emilio gives $1 billion to Deeds as a reward for his devotion to all company employees. Deeds thanks him and walks out of the hall with Babe. People applaud them. Then Deeds takes Babe to his hometown. Deeds is still running his small restaurant, but he now has a lot of money to spend on becoming a great poet. They both kiss. This video ends here. If you enjoy our video, don't forget to subscribe, like and hit the notification button so you won't miss any of our video, and let us know your thoughts about this movie in the comments, and we will see you next time. Take care.